A quick note and our big thank you to our regular listeners. Welcome to Le Weekend, the natural evolution of the previously daily France News Brief episodes, offering an essential recap of French news on business, culture, the economy, and current affairs every weekend without losing any of the previous daily content. As of January 1st, the podcast drops every weekend for deeper insights and a convenient end-of-week roundup. I am Sylvia Davis, independent journalist based in France, thanking you for your continued support and wishing you Bonne année 2026. Let's dive in. Welcome to Le Weekend, your essential roundup of French news on culture, business, the economy, and current affairs. We bring you a convenient way to catch up on the stories from the past week in France, plus an additional focus feature blending reportage and cultural context. You'll find a seamless recap of the week's most important headlines without losing any content from our previous daily format, perfect for those who want to catch up in just one episode. Le Weekend is designed to keep you informed and engaged with a lighter touch at the end. Let's dive in. This is the news for Monday, December 29th. Brigitte Bardot, icon of French cinema, died at age 91. The French performer, shot to fame as a sex symbol in 1956's And God Created Woman, she quit acting and became dedicated to animal welfare and later became known for her activism, as reported by Reuters. George Clooney and his family have obtained French nationality by naturalization. The decree applies to the celebrity couple and their 8-year-old twins, as reported by Le Monde. Sales on Christmas Eve were stronger than in previous years, up 10% year-on-year. The trend was particularly noticeable in the food sector, with a 15 to 20% increase in consumption compared to 2024, according to figures cited by Minister for Small and Medium Enterprises and Trade, Serge Papin, in an interview with Le Parisien. France has seen a sharp rise in church thefts targeting sacred art, driven by soaring gold prices and easy access to many small, poorly protected buildings. The Interior Ministry recorded 538 cases in 2025, an 11% rise from the previous year, as reported by RFI. This is the news for Tuesday, December 30th. Eurostar trains resumed service across Europe after a power glitch on the Channel Tunnel caused major disruptions to train services between London, Paris, and Amsterdam, prompting the train company to urge passengers to delay travel. Getlink, the tunnel's operator, later said traffic was expected to return to normal overnight at one of the busiest travel times of the year, as reported by Le Monde. A French ban on forever chemicals in cosmetics and clothing is entering into force. The law bans the production, import, or sale from January 2026 onwards of any product for which an alternative to PFAS already exists. PFAS are human-made chemicals used since the late 40s to mass-produce the non-stick, waterproof, and stain-resistant treatments found in cosmetics, ski wax, and some clothing, as reported by Le Monde. The Italian state rail operator teamed up with an American fund to expand French services. Italy's state rail operator Ferrovie dello Stato has said it will increase operations in its Trenitalia France unit via a billion-dollar joint venture with a U.S. private equity fund, Certar, as reported by RFI. Airbus is set to receive $8 billion worth of orders from China. Two Chinese airlines have announced their intention to acquire 55 single-aisle aircraft from the Airbus A320 family for approximately $8 billion, according to documents cited by Bloomberg. The French government today postponed a ban on plastic single-use cups by 4 years because of difficulties finding alternatives. The ban was meant to start on January 1st, but the Ministry for Ecological Transition said the technical feasibility of eliminating plastic from cups following a review this year justified pushing back the deadline to 2030, as reported by Le Monde. You're listening to Le Weekend. And now that you're all caught up with the headlines from the past week, it's time for our bonus story. Today we're looking at why the work of Henri Matisse made the news this week. In the closing weeks of 2025, the Museum of Modern Art in Paris received an exceptional donation of 61 works by Henri Matisse from the widow of the artist's grandson. They included 7 paintings, 1 sculpture, 28 drawings, 8 etchings, 6 lithographs, 5 original posters, and 6 illustrated books, most depicting Marguerite Matisse, the artist's eldest daughter and his favorite model. The donation carries profound emotional weight. Barbara was married to Claude Matisse's grandson, and she was daughter-in-law to Marguerite, who lived from 1894 to 1982. As museum director Fabrice Ergot explained, the gesture reflects deep commitment and confidence in the museum, which effectively becomes Marguerite's new home for the decades and centuries to come. These works had remained in the family since Matisse's death in 1954, making their emergence into the public realm all the more significant. The collection had been on loan to the museum for the exhibition Matisse and Marguerite Through Her Father's Eyes, which ran from April 4th to August 24th, 2025. To honor her mother-in-law, Barbara wished to entrust them to an institution in Paris, the city where Marguerite was born and died. It isn't Barbara's first donation, as in an act of generosity in 2013, she gave the 1910 painting Marguerite au Chat Noir to Paris's Centre Pompidou. What makes this collection so special is that it chronicles an intimate relationship. The works span the first half of the 20th century, casting light on each period of the tender and complicit relationship between painter and subject, from childhood images like Marguerite writing and studies for Marguerite reading from 1906 through 1920, painting Marguerite endormie, creating during her convalescence at Étretat, to deeply moving portraits created in 1945 when Marguerite escaped deportation because of her involvement in the French resistance. But who was Marguerite, and why did she occupy such a central place in her father's work? Marguerite was born in 1894 from a brief relationship between the artist, who was then a young painting student, with his model Caroline Jublot. Matisse acknowledged the child when she was 3, and she thereafter lived with the artist and his wife Amélie. She grew up alongside Jean and Pierre, Matisse's sons, with his wife Amélie, in what the family described as a tightly knit unit. From childhood, the young girl became one of Matisse's favorite models, her fragile health obliging her to mostly stay at home. She survived a severe form of diphtheria that required an emergency tracheotomy, and for years she hid the scar with high collars or ribbons. This medical history meant she spent considerable time indoors, making her readily available as a model to her father's artistic explorations. Marguerite became a leader of the French resistance during World War II and was captured by the Gestapo in 1944. The portraits created in January 1945, including the lithograph Visage du Retour, are particularly moving as they were made after she had narrowly escaped the Nazis who had arrested and tortured her. These drawings capture not just a face, but survival itself. The Visage du Retour, face of return, speaks to the miracle of her deliverance. Marguerite was an artist in her own right and had begun painting herself and was included in some group exhibitions during the war years. She was very interested in fashion, but she was somehow always under her father's shadow, and she soon abandoned her artistic career to dedicate herself completely to her father's work, becoming his assistant and agent until Matisse's death in 1954. She married a scholar, Georges Dutuit, in 1923, and shortly before her death in 1982, she collaborated with her son Claude on creating the Catalogue raisonné of her father's graphic works, published in 1983. This new donation allows us to revisit the full arc of Henri Matisse's career, one of the most revolutionary in 20th century art. He is known as a master colorist and a pioneer of modernism. Matisse was born in 1869 in Picardy, in the north of France, to parents in the grain business. He grew up displaying little interest in art and spent 2 years studying law in Paris. But then fate intervened. While recovering from a severe attack of appendicitis in 1890, he began to paint. His mother brought him art supplies during his convalescence, and he discovered what he later described as a kind of paradise. He told Pierre Courtion in 1941 that it was a place where he was completely free, alone, quiet and tranquil, whereas he had always been a little anxious and bored in the different things he had done in the past. So in 1891, he returned to Paris, but this time to study art at the Académie Julian and at the École Nationale des Beaux-Arts under Gustave Moreau. Initially, he painted still lifes and landscapes in the traditional style, and he became reasonably proficient. Then he absorbed influences from masters such as Chardin, Poussin, and Watteau, as well as modern artists like Manet and also Japanese art. In 1896, Matisse visited Australian painter John Russell off the coast of Brittany, where he was introduced to Impressionism and to the work of Van Gogh, who had been Russell's friend, and also where he married Amélie Parère in 1898, with whom he would have 2 children, Jean and Pierre, as well as his adopted daughter, Marguerite. The big breakthrough came in 1905, the pivotal summer that would forever change modern art. Matisse and André Derain introduced unnaturalistic color and vivid brushstrokes into their paintings, working together in the small fishing port of Collioure in the Mediterranean. He had gone to Collioure on the advice of his friend Paul Signac, and in less than 3 months, Matisse painted more than 15 canvases, 40 watercolors, and produced around 100 drawings. When the paintings were exhibited at the Salon d'Automne in Paris later that year, critics called the painters as fauves, wild beasts, giving the movement the name by which it became known, fauvism. The pictures gained considerable condemnation. Critic Camille Mauclair wrote that a pot of paint had been flung in the face of the public. But they also attracted favorable attention. The painting singled out for special condemnation, Woman with a Hat, was bought by Gertrude and Leo Stein, considerably improving the artist's morale. Matisse was considered as a leader of the fauves. While the style continued for some years, the movement as such lasted only till 1908 and had around 3 exhibitions. It became a transitional stepping stone for future development. In 1906, Matisse met Pablo Picasso, who was 11 years his junior. The two became friends as well as rivals and are often compared. In 1917, Matisse traveled to Nice in the south of France and eventually settled there for the rest of his life, visiting Renoir regularly at Cagnes-sur-Mer. Matisse would later write that when he realized every morning he would see this light again, he could not describe his joy, and he decided not to leave Nice, staying there practically all his life. The final chapter of Matisse's career began with a health impairment. Diagnosed with abdominal cancer in 1941, he underwent surgery that left him chair and bedbound. After several surgeries, he was confined mostly to his bed and to a wheelchair. For most artists, this would have meant the end of creative production. For Matisse, however, it sparked an extraordinary renaissance. No longer able to paint or sculpt, he instead cut forms from colored paper that he arranged as collage and découpage, which became known as the cutouts. The solution came in the form of what he called painting with scissors. Matisse began using gouache-painted paper, which he cut into shapes with scissors, then arranged and pasted onto a surface, often large canvases or walls. The same year, at age 74, Matisse began jazz with his assistants, helping him prepare the collages for printing using a stencil process known as pochoir. He worked on the series for 2 years, utilizing this new method that linked drawing and color. In 1947, publisher Thériade issued the composition in an artist's portfolio, including 20 color prints, about 16 by 26 inches, as well as the artist's handwritten notes expressing his thoughts throughout the process. The context of this work matters because several members of Matisse's family were active in the resistance and in great danger, especially after they were captured in prison and tortured, including, of course, his daughter Marguerite. The technique allowed Matisse to continue creating monumental works. Some of his later works were inspired by places he could no longer visit in person, such as 1946 Oceania, the Sky, and the Parakeet and the Mermaid. as he described a mural that covered 2 walls of his studio as a little garden all around me where I can walk. Perhaps the crown achievement of his career was the commission of the Chapel of the Rosary in Vence from 1948 to 51, for which he created all the wall decorations, Stations of the Cross, furniture, stained glass windows, even the vestments and altar cloths. Matisse said, "The chapel is for me the culmination of a whole life's work, for which I was chosen by destiny at the end of my journey, and which I continue in accordance with my ideals, the chapel giving me the opportunities to secure them by bringing them together." Matisse died in 1954, having transformed himself from a law clerk who discovered painting during illness into one of the defining artists of the 20th century. The revolutionary colorist, the master of form, the inventor of the cutout technique, was also a man who looked at his daughter with tenderness and painted what he saw, not just her face, but her resilience, her quiet strength, and her survival. As museum director Ergotte observed, the museum becomes now Marguerite's new home for the decades and centuries to come, as a fitting legacy for a woman who dedicated her life to preserving her father's work and who, through these images, continues to speak across time. Thank you for listening to Le Weekend, your one-stop destination for the main headlines in France. Catch our weekly roundup every weekend wherever you get your podcasts. Stay informed.